So this topic kind of came up as we were planning this conference, and I did some looking around. Ryan was one of the first people I talked to, and everybody seemed to think it was an important topic of how do we help these group of students that were finishing their junior year. We got those seniors through, we got them graduated, but they were at the tail end of this, and the lingering effects of the whole world kind of stopping in March and not knowing how this fall is going to restart. It seems like we've missed a very important time in this cohort of students, especially that junior senior level that seem to be moving on. And so rather than hear from me, I brought in a panelist of different people because we've discovered no one is really an expert on this, but everybody kind of knows a little bit or shares some similar concerns. And so I guess I think the best way to kind of start this off is to hear from those that live it and know it. And so I brought in a couple of seniors and their moms, and they're gonna kind of talk about what they've missed and what they're afraid of, and just kind of set the tone for what we're looking at here. So Faith and Rylan, if you want to start things off.
Sure. So I kind of threw some questions at Amy when she, asked me if we would be interested in being involved in this. And I guess kind of something that Rylan and I have worked through at this point was just even planning for her senior year, like with her classes. So school shut down before she was even able to meet with her counselor to kind of just talk about what her options and everything were. And so, do you want to talk about how we kind of resolved that?
Well, the counselor that was primarily in charge of like my group of people, she was never really available, and I don't know, it was just really hard to get to her. So we had to go to a different lady, and she sat down with us, and she talked through my schedule. She removed a bunch of classes that were just in there for no reason. She put me in a bunch of classes that would actually take me where I wanted to be instead of just as filler classes. And so that was really helpful just for moving forward.
Yeah, I think it was just hard because, we hadn't visited any schools. We're just starting to talk about like maybe where Rylan's interests lie, and hadn't really talked to any counselor about what classes would be available around those interests. And at Harrisburg we have a lot of different programs. We have early college, you're able to take dual credit classes, AP classes, and Rylan had been in an AP class, and it kind of
it was
not for her.
It was not the right path for me, and there was just a situation that went down with the teacher that caused us to have to switch instructors, and that was terrible.
Yeah.
And then at the end I decided that I was not prepared enough to take the AP class, so I didn't get the AP test, and so I didn't get college credit for that. It was a good class, I learned a lot, but I didn't feel prepared enough.
I think that the COVID situation had something to do with that too. I think had you had more time, because her teacher switched mid-semester, so if she would have had more time face-to-face with that teacher, I think it would have been better, but it just kind of threw everything up in the air. So then we kind of felt like maybe dual credit was a better option for her.
And the entire, whether you get credit for it or not is not completely based on a test, because I'm not the greatest test taker. I didn't do so great on the ACT, so I was just like, that's not the best for me personally. And so with dual credit, you get the credit based on what grade you get in the class. And so that is just better for me because I tend to get better grades than high test scores. So
yeah, and the ACT was like a whole nother thing. She was signed up to take the ACT in April, and then that didn't happen. And so she's even more distanced from some of those important classes that you need to keep you going, like math, for instance. And so then we took it this summer, and I don't think she got a bad score. I mean, it wasn't the score that she desired. So now we're looking at what our options are for like maybe retaking it, or that's just kind of something that we maybe could use a little guidance in, like what would be best for her, like retake it, not take it and just continue on our path with the score that we got and try to find scholarships that maybe aren't so based around ACT score. That's just kind of the little bit of a frustration point for us right now. Yeah, and then just the frustration of not being able to visit campuses, kind of find out what their programs are for helping kids just find a path, that type of thing. Those are kind of, I don't know, that's a lot about us. Oh, I think you're muted, Amy.
Haven't been muted much today. Another reason we picked you is because of Ryland's extracurriculars, and you had mentioned that in your conversation to me too. You want to touch on that a little bit before we move on, and some of her leadership things?
Yeah. Oh, am I on mute?
Can I talk?
No, you're good.
I'm good.
Okay,
Go for it.
so for extracurriculars, I've been in theater and show choir since freshman year. And then for show choir, we weren't really that big of a group. We weren't really that good either. And then things started to pick up my sophomore year. I've been a dance captain since sophomore year. So that's been a leadership thing for me. And then in theater, I was I was like the acting coach, which was kind of a leadership position, but it didn't really do much. It was just kind of one of those things where they were like, if we need extra help in this area, we will come to you. And then,
but for this year,
I was given a officer position as the secretary. So that'll be really fun, and that started actually picking up just last week. So I'm really excited for that too.
Yeah, so basically we're just really hoping that some of these extracurriculars can play out, because I think, as Ryland was saying, you know, like her leadership has grown as like her show choir group has grown. And, you know, this year it's kind of the pinnacle for her where she can really shine and put those leadership skills that she's gained over the past few years into play. But if they don't have plays, if they don't have, you know, their drama club does a lot more than just support the plays. They do fundraisers for groups in need, and they have lock-ins for their members to help them grow in the area of theater. And they do a lot of planning. Ryland was just on a Zoom meeting for 4 hours trying to plan this stuff out. So if all of a sudden we can't have extracurriculars after school because of whatever reasons, the policies that may be, you know, then all that goes downhill. And if she can't have, you know, show choir and, you know, help build up the group for this is supposed to be her pinnacle year, that's, you know, she won't have a lot to reflect on when she needs to write scholarship essays or speak to these things when she's trying to use these leadership opportunities to, you know, build herself up.
Great. All right, and then our next group is Vicki and Brianna Dury. Brianna is a senior as well that's been really involved in FFA and FCCLA especially. And on this call, we have CTE teachers from across the state. And so most of them are advisors to either those programs or one of our other CTSOs. So just sharing a little bit about experiences that you have, similar or differences. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so some of the main stuff that I have struggled with during the whole COVID situation is my extracurriculars. Since I'm involved in so many, I'm involved in FFA, FCCLA, Key Club. I'm involved in volleyball, cheerleading, track. So I'm involved in a lot in my school. So one of the main things that our school had to work through in a lot of the programs was to get information out, which was kind of hard because a lot of them don't have a way to put out information. So for example, our FFA chapter, when we have to have a banquet, we didn't have a banquet this year, which means we don't have new incoming officers at the time. So our FFA program currently has 2019-20 officers, not 2020-21 officers, and we don't know when we're gonna do that. And then things like SCCLA was all virtual, which was a huge struggle because nobody really knew entirely what to do. They didn't set super strict guidelines. So I know that was a big struggle for me and my mom when we were trying to figure stuff like that out. And I know you had different worries and stuff about the school situation.
I think as far as a parent goes, I can honestly say that our school was really good about keeping the parents informed. Our school was really on top of when we went distance learning, the school was on top of things. I never felt as a parent out of the loop. And Brianna's my baby of 4. So we've always been very prepared going throughout all of the high school years, as Brianna has also been. She did kind of jump on it early and take the ACT test a couple times before they shut down the ACT site or the testing places. Now I know Bree wants to take the ACT again, so we're trying to get that scheduled. And it's a little bit frustrating when you have students that want to excel and they want to move forward, and they kind of are up against a wall or it's halted. So I think as a parent, what I feel that we need is that liaison between where we're at now and where we need to work for or work toward, what's our next step? Then what's our next step after that? Because it's all uncharted waters. We've never been here before. So we need a guiding hand to get her back on the path to be successful at college. So I'm kind of hoping for maybe some answers there, some suggestions, and maybe to toss the ball around so that we as the parents of seniors don't end up with this group that's lost in between the seniors that just graduated, but they're on, but yet the juniors coming in that, of course, they have to start looking at recruitment. They have to start doing all the same things that we are now. So how are the colleges going to handle that? Brianna brought up athletics. If your kid or your student is looking at athletic scholarships or wanting to play collegiate, whatever, volleyball, basketball, they're behind too. So what are the resources and where are the resources that we need to get our kids caught up? It's kind of where I'm at as a parent. Anything else that you want to?
Great. And like I said, nobody has the information, and today is really just a talking session and some guidelines as you go, but we also have school counselors and part of this. So I think this is part of a bigger discussion. And some of what we come out today is going to lead us in stepping forward. It's going to help our admissions folks who are on, our school counselors that are on, help others and do their job better. And so that we can really start to triage this, because it has been taking care of everything in the moment. We needed to transition to remote learning. Now we have to figure out how to get our schools open, but then this will really be one of the big next steps for those admissions people. Once they get their freshmen in the door, then as they start to pivot and looking at the 2021 class, what do they need to do to bridge this gap? So I just appreciate the discussion. Threw out some questions, and I hope that the group has some questions as well. But if Ryan wants to take this one first, but I thought I would start visiting colleges last spring to help me decide what to do after high school. And then all the schools shut down and I wasn't able to do any admissions visits, and now I feel behind. Both of you brought this up. So I don't even know if they're open back up yet, but Ryan can talk more about that. So I'll give it to him.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. And I appreciate you both sharing kind of your frustrations as you've navigated our health pandemic. And as I think back to March, when we were preparing or responding to the emergence of that, I think one thing to keep in mind, and I think it was said already, is that it kind of felt like everything just stopped for the time being. And I think that's important to remember a little bit, where personally it feel like maybe it was only stopped for you, but everything around us kind of stopped too. And just recently, we've really been probably resuming what maybe we all, in some way refer to as normal, or getting closer to what we remember as normal. So I think keep that in mind, is that, we're really still progressing from that point in time, and that those opportunities will still be there. What I think is important to remember is a college search isn't defined, and your academic preparation isn't defined by one day, by one ACT, and then early in your or late in your junior year or early in your senior year. It's not defined by one campus visit opportunity that maybe you had scheduled that you weren't able to visit early on. What we really hope that you're thinking about your college preparation is that's happening from now through graduation, and that you have time yet to be able to build a resume. You have time yet to organize your plan, connect with schools, and really feel like everything that you maybe had planned out that would have started in March and April and June, it maybe just as pushed back a few months, and that you're going to be able to do all those things and feel that you're able to make informed decisions about your future. And I'm speaking for many colleges and universities, not just for SDSU here, but many of us, we're now resuming a lot of our opportunities for students as well. Many colleges and universities kind of pivoted right after the pandemic hit and offered a lot of virtual opportunities for students. And that has kind of carried most of us through a lot of the summer. And now, as we kind of transition to students returning back to our campuses, we're also opening up our campuses for more campus visit opportunities for you to explore. So we're seeing those resume. What that really means, and I think this is lost a little bit, is now I think you're going to find you probably have more options for acquiring information than your predecessors did a year ago, because there's more virtual content. There's more focused on making it convenient to you to do some of this early exploration right from home, and then be able to make it to a campus visit at a later time. So keep that in mind, whether that's a student question and answer panel, maybe recorded resources, or other virtual tours. You have a lot of those resources in addition to what was the traditional college search. So they can be a really valuable part of it. As you were talking a little bit about kind of liaisons needed, or kind of your support team, I think that's just a great approach of identifying, who's my support system in my college search, and to know that you don't have to navigate that alone as a student, as a family, but just know you have excellent resources in your school districts. You have excellent resources on your college campuses that really have your student success in mind. And so we're here to help you with that along the way. So maybe the last thing I would just say is, start putting together your plan, and just know that that's a personal plan, and what's happening, what your friend is doing, or what your older sibling did a year ago, that might be different for you this year, but there's still great opportunity to have that to end up in a successful senior year, a really memorable senior year, that you'll be looking back on in the future, wherever that might take you post high school graduation.
Awesome. All right. I don't think Darren or Lee has jumped on, so we'll just go ahead and go on to the next question here. All right. ACT came up a lot. So this question I just have, I worked hard to do everything on my schedule. I was supposed to take my ACT test for the first time in April of my junior year. So I wasn't able to do that test. Could I do a retest this fall for applying to colleges? Just kind of what would you advise for those students that maybe feel like they're behind because they weren't like Brianna and got on it ahead of that March, what was down date? Danielle or Alyssa, do you want to kick us off on this one?
I can. So I would say, if possible, if they were scheduled to take it in April, make sure that they're in contact with ACT, because I believe that they can reschedule that without a fee. So that would be my my first thing, if you call ACT, I always, I guess, give the heads up that you might be on the phone for about an hour. It's a very lengthy process for all of us, as well as if you email, sometimes you don't get a response back for a day or two. So sometimes you have to kind of be persistent with that. The other thing with the ACT is if you can schedule, they've added a lot of dates this fall. They've added extra dates. So just try to get in some of them. If they cancel, obviously that's beyond your control, but even if you can just get on the books, the earliest one I believe coming up is in September. There's one, should be one, I think September 13th. I'm sorry, I don't have my calendar in front of me. And then there's another one in September, and there's 3 in October. So you're even getting in, if you haven't had a chance to even sit for the exam, that's huge. Just kind of knowing what to expect. The other thing I always kind of give the heads up of, do some practice with that ACT. So even if you haven't been able to get the actual ACT, I don't know if your school counseling office has an actual paper copy. I give out paper copies to all my kids that have, it's identical book to what they get on test day if they take it paper pencil, which is how we offer it. But then there's a lot of great free online resources. One of them is SD through SD My Life, which is free. It's a great study tool. And then obviously ACT themselves have some free online questions and prep. And again, there's many, many others, but those are the two. If you can exhaust those 3, then look for other resources. But those would be probably my big things, is if you can get that in and just really just start prepping for it now.
I want to add on to what Elisa said. She did a really good job of outlining that, but something else to consider is, depending on what your academic plan is, maybe looking at some of those placement tests too. Taking an AccuPlacer through Lake Area or another institution, so that way you're eligible for those dual credit things. And a lot of times they'll be able to give you some insight on different things. And if you're going to the 2-year school, an AccuPlacer is something that they would utilize over the ACT. ACT still has lots of benefits for you, but an AccuPlacer might be another route for you.
And the AccuPlacer is free.
Yes.
And not timed.
And not timed, correct. And that's a huge, I have kids because they can qualify for that dual credit through the AccuPlacer who maybe don't meet a benchmark for math or English for the ACT because it's a time test, but with the AccuPlacer they do just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie, did you have anything you wanted to add in there? They kind of covered your stuff, but.
They did great. A couple of things that I did learn, that there are 2 full-length ACT exams through that SD My Life that you can take just to kind of get an idea of how you are doing. But then there's also evaluation tests that are only about, I was told, 10 to 15 minutes in the 4 different areas. So that way you can just take that short assessment test to see where you're at. And if you really need to focus in on, say, reading, then that's where you can go in and really practice. Because I know that was my hardest part. So the more practice, the better. And then through that SD My Life, they do walk you through either through, I'm drawing a blank here. They video, and you can read it, and they explain the answers to all the questions of why you got the answer maybe you did compared to what it's actually supposed to be. So if you can do that, I was told to go try that out, and I know I was messing around in there and I thought it was really neat. So, and it's free. Like they said, the more you can do things for free, the better off that you are before you spend that money to take the test.
So we have a variety of people on here that maybe aren't so familiar with SD My Life. So if you're an elementary teacher and maybe you have a student or you're just curious, any student can log into that with their K-12 email and their K-12 email password. And then it's just down at the bottom, usually in the right-hand corner, it's called Method Test Prep. And that's the program that we're talking about. All right, everything keeps changing. Every day there's something new that's changed or canceled. Ryan, do you have any idea if anything will be, any deadlines or opportunities or any of that stuff is looking to change right now?
Sure, and I think first and foremost, it's important to probably make sure you remain in connection with whatever your post-secondary options that you're considering, whether that's military, whether that's whether a student's interested in higher education or even career preparation, and maybe just make sure you're staying closely connected, because I think that might be different for each of those. So that's something I think is important for students. From the education side, I think when we talk about a lot of these changes that are happening, a lot of the changes are happening to add flexibility, flexibility to policies and protocols that have been in place that are kind of being rethought. And how can we really reevaluate these in the best interests of students? So anything that is changing, most likely that's going to be changing to your benefit, to provide some understanding and some flexibility. Knowing that the pandemic has impacted students' preparation and readiness dating back to March, whether that is a missed ACT, maybe that's changes in preparation to take standard exams like the AP, which was shared. So those are often going to help. We've extended some of our dates for accepting certain scores and things like that. So I think you're going to see a lot of schools will maybe extend or modify some dates. Modify maybe some timelines of which you can be taking steps with those schools. So I don't know that from what I've seen, there's not a lot of those changes that are going to be harmful to students' opportunities. So I think for the most part, everybody is trying to kind of partner to continue to maintain every opportunity that was in place before. So that's what I think I would probably, very generally encourage everybody to look into as you approach a college search or whatever your post-secondary plan would be.
Anybody else have anything on that?
Ryan, you made the comment that it's important to keep in contact, say with a university you're looking at or a VOTEC or something. As a parent, sometimes it's a little intimidating when you pick up the phone and you call SDSU and you don't really know for sure who you should be talking to. So what is the department or the department head or what's the role of the person typically at that secondary or the college level that we would ask to speak to and establish a rapport with?
Mm-hmm. For most colleges and universities, it's going to start with their admissions office, and that's the department that I'm in. And as much as each of us would love to see you end up at our schools, really we want you to be successful wherever you end up choosing. And I think you're going to find that we're going to be great resources to you as you pursue your higher education opportunities. So whether you think you have a question about campus housing, financial aid, student activities, athletics, the admissions office is a great place to start because we have our hand in a little bit of everything across our campuses. So within each admissions office, usually there's going to be a designated individual that's going to just make sure we're checking in a timely manner to make sure if there is any information that's needed, how can we follow up and help make this college search process as smooth as we can. So I think once you have that established contact, just know that our role here on campus is to help make this process as easy as we can for you and to be basically good storytellers of our colleges and universities and to be able to connect you with the right information so you can be informed about your decisions. So whether your preferred method of communication is a phone call, a text, an email, all are acceptable. So I think whichever you're most comfortable communicating with us, we're happy to connect with you in whatever way that you want to do that. And I think on the other side of it, I know how many outgoing phone calls and emails and open rates and things that aren't opened, aren't answered, aren't returned. So make sure when you do get that call or you get a text or an email comes from that school that you've expressed an interest in, reply back. And don't be afraid to maybe share a couple things about yourself and what's really important to you, and know that you're going to have a good connection on those campuses.
Brian. So not to take anything away from Ryan, he's done a great job, but we do have another admissions person on the line. Darren, we've talked a little bit about college visits and missing ACT tests, and the counselors did mention the AccuPlacer also being important, and maybe if you don't need the ACT, to focus on that, and then extending some deadlines. Do you have anything else you want to add in there for us?
Well, I did come in at the end of Ryan's talk there, and Ryan and I have worked together for many years, so everything he said kind of resonates back towards us. One thing that we did for the senior class this year was we actually just put a forbearance on all testing. So a student coming in that would start school here in a couple of weeks, we just put the AccuPlacer or any ACT test on the back burner, and we'll deal with that when school begins here at Lake Area Tech. So if there is a student that's still trying to decide their summer plan here, we wouldn't put a test in front of them. We waived the application fee and we just said, okay, testing aside, we'll deal with that when school begins. So things like class placement and remediation of classes, we'll work with that when school gets going. For a student coming into a senior year who would start fall 21, Ryan, I don't know if you had talked about this or if you've gotten to this point yet, but we're hopefully starting testing again. So if we're having trouble getting to an ACT, our testing center is open in a one-on-one format. It's very private, wear a mask, go in and test. So we're starting that again. So that could come into play for a student who's coming up. As far as anything else, were there other areas that we covered that I didn't catch before I got on, Amy?
No, I think that's pretty good. In the remote testing for
remote testing in the high school. Yep. So anybody that can proctor within a high school. So if we have a student from, let's say they're from Watertown High School and they couldn't get here to the school, the counselor could offer that test there at the high school. So a student can get that in before the school year begins.
I just want to jump in really quick. I didn't mention this earlier, but something else to think about is working with your school on college visit days. As these schools start to open up, most high schools have the opportunity to give you an excuse day to go onto campuses and to look at the colleges and visit with people one-on-one. And so as those are starting to open back up and things like that, make sure you're speaking with your counselors, your principals, whoever those are, to see what options are available for you guys too.
All right. And then, of course, the financial aspect is in the back of everybody's mind. You know, a few questions that I've gotten asked is, you know, my part-time job that I was planning on working for summer, my hours have been reduced or been laid off. Opportunity Scholarship and Build Dakota are big ones. And then also, you know, a lot of our scholarships are based on funds that draw interest on those funds. And so are we going to see a decrease in that? We have Kathy from Mapping Our Future on here, and I'll let her kick it off on kind of what she's expecting to see different in the financial aid.
Thank you, Amy. One of the things that I wanted to mention is it's critical that students complete the FAFSA as soon as it becomes available on October 1st, as soon as possible. And that's the FAFSA that will be for the 21-22. I know that a lot of students have questioned the future holds for them, but it's really important, no matter what you plan to do, or if you aren't sure what you plan to do, that you go ahead and fill out the FAFSA, because it keeps your options open. And that FAFSA is going to be very important. Now, the FAFSA will be dependent on your income from 2019. Well, you may have seen some changes if you've had a layoff or, you know, you lost a part-time job. And so go ahead and fill out the FAFSA as required and providing the 2019 information. And then what you'll want to do after that is contact the school, depending on what financial aid you receive, and you may need to file an appeal because if your income accurately reflected because things have changed for you, you want to let the financial aid office know that because you may be eligible for additional financial aid. So that's really important, and it's important that you be very specific in that financial aid appeal, that You explain what the situation is, how things have changed for you from 2019, and basically, any information that you can provide to make that case for that appeal. In addition, I think there are a lot of other things that students may want to consider if they don't get additional financial aid, things they can do to reduce college cost. And that could be, living at home and commuting to campus, perhaps. Looking at lower cost colleges, things like that. Some families are, kind of going back to the drawing board and looking to see how can we make this more affordable based on our current financial situation. I would recommend that if you are planning on starting maybe say at a less expensive college and then transferring over to a 4-year institution later, that one of the things you want to make sure that you ask about is the ability to transfer credits. And so that's an option that students have, but make sure that the credits you take at that college that you attend first is transferable. All we know is jobs likely impacted pandemic. I think some students will still be able to work on campus, and there will also be work study. Work study is a federal need-based program, but if you are eligible for that, that allows you to work on campus or off campus. And some of those can be virtual. So it just really depends on the college or university. But in any case, make sure that you take advantage of any opportunities. And when you complete the FAFSA, whether you think you qualify for it or not, go ahead and say you're interested in work study. Because you may qualify for it later, and also you can always turn it down if it's not something that is a good fit for you. Some of the other things I did want to mention to you about student loans, we always encourage students to be very careful about taking out student loans, that they look at all the free sources of funding first. So make sure that you're applying for scholarships, that you're taking advantage of the many South Dakota opportunities for scholarships, and look at your own community and what scholarships are available. But if you do take out student loans, there's some good news, and that is that the interest rates right now are at 0%. Of course, that's not going to affect our seniors right now, but the Congress has temporarily placed interest rates on student loans at 0. That does expire now, September 30th. Now, Congress could change that. There is a lot of talk going on right now that they're going to extend that 0% interest rate. In any case, if things go back to normal when you begin your freshman year and you do have some student loans, the interest rates next year are going to be at historic lows. Right now, they're at 2.75%. And so that's a really good situation for students who do have to borrow to pursue a post-secondary education. There's a lot of other things with regard to financial aspects of planning for college, and we're available at Mapping Your Future to help students with that, and they can call our 800 number or contact us via email.
We did have a quick question on, does the date that they apply for the FAFSA have any bearing on the amount of the award?
So does not, except let me make a case to that, in that it doesn't impact federal financial aid, but it may affect other institutional aid, because in some cases there's only a limited amount of institutional aid. And what I mean by that is any campus-based programs. For instance, a college or a school or university you're considering attending may have a certain amount of funds available at that institution. And they're going to award that on a first-come, first-served basis in many cases. And so the sooner you get your application in, the better situation you're going to be in. Also be mindful that colleges and universities do have priority deadlines. I think they've had some flexibility with that under the pandemic, but check the financial aid website for the college or university that you plan to attend to check that priority deadline. So you for any campus aid. And we also list those dates on the southdakota.mappingyourfuture.org website.
All right, Darren, do you have any news on Build Dakota and how that might be affected?
Yeah, good news, actually. I talked with those folks yesterday just to make sure, actually Friday, to make sure that I could answer this question. And it is proceeding forward as normal. It's fully funded through. So for anybody who is going into their senior year and is looking at one of those programs like nursing or med lab tech or the welding programs that are included in that, there is still full access to the 100+ Build Dakota scholarships for Lake Area. And then also the same to be said for the other 3 technical colleges in the state. So good news on that. That deadline coincides with financial aid. So for the seniors, that'll be your March 31st. Get everything in by that date and you'll be on the front side and eligible for Build Dakota.
Ryan, any changes to Opportunity Scholarship?
Just some slight changes, and that's in regards to the flexibility with accepting coursework that was taken during this spring term. So in some cases, students, when they were given some choices for alternative grading, we're going to be flexible, and colleges and campuses are going to be flexible with how they accept those scores towards meeting those requirements. So that's probably the biggest difference and the biggest change that we've seen there. And then I believe that one thing I would need to check into a little bit more, but they've had some other, I think if there are some extenuating circumstances, I think they have some, if I recall, a waiver process in place that'll allow some additional time for some students that maybe were greatly impacted by that.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to jump past some of these and we can come back. So another thing that we talk about a lot in our work is how is workforce going to change? Our world has been shooken in ways we never thought possible in a short amount of time. And we have 15, 16, 17-year-olds looking at this going, my world looks different. Should I change my career plan? Should I wait to go to college? They're looking at debt differently. Danielle and Alyssa, do you have any advice on how to work with kids that maybe have those anxieties about what their future might look like?
It's kind of a loaded question. Yikes. That's where I would usually initially say no, not necessarily, but if they were kind of on that bubble, not really sure what they wanted to go into, then maybe. However, even before COVID happened, I would tell kids that gone are the days that we go to school just to figure it out. It's too expensive now. And that's where just really kind of doing some of those evaluations and really kind of having an idea, that job shadowing, that the interviewing, just really kind of getting in youth internship, figuring out, is this really what I want to do? Again, I also preface that with you're 16, 17, 18. It's okay. You don't know what you want to do the rest of your life, but having an idea, maybe even in a broad sense, is helpful. That's a huge question. And it's going to be different for every single kid in terms of how much debt they're wanting to take on to do that. But usually my initial response would be, if you were sure this is where you wanted to go, kind of what you wanted to do, you're pretty sure this is the path. No, I wouldn't say change that, unless obviously that job is obsolete right now, then maybe you would change that. But that's a tough one. Danielle?
I agree with Elisa. That's a really difficult question. And I guess I want to reiterate what she said. Do that self-exploration. Make sure you're taking those matchmakers and assessments that help you to figure out what you're interested in, how your abilities align with that, because ultimately that's going to help direct you into the path. I always like to tell students to look at the lifestyle you want to and work backwards. And so if you want to live in this $1 million home, but you want to work at McDonald's, do those really match up? And so making sure that you're also fitting some of what you're thinking you want to do into where you see yourself in the future. Again, that's different for every student, and what's going to be best for one student is not going to be best for the other. But making sure that you're also going to those online resources and looking at career outlooks. There are going to be things that tell you which careers are up and coming and where the job market is, and looking into that. And maybe the career that you're looking at doesn't have a hot market or isn't going to necessarily be something that's going to be hiring, but there might be something similar that you could look at and tailor what you're going to school for to kind of fit that, so you're still doing some of the things that you're interested in and having a career that you love as well.
I have a question. So just for the admissions officers that are on here, you know, do your schools have kind of like an exploratory program? You know, just because my daughter goes to a pretty big high school, and there's 4 guidance counselors for the entire high school, and we have had difficulties, you know, connecting with her assigned counselor, and luckily they've shifted some things around so that we can access someone for some help, you know, thus far. But she hasn't had a lot of you know, interaction where she's been directed towards some of those, you know, resources. So is the, you know, if it's something that doesn't happen so much in high school for her, is there programs at the college level that they can explore?
I'm going to jump in there a little bit and kind of challenge you to maybe seek that out this year. Go talk with, specifically ask what you can do for your work-based learning. Is there senior experience? Is there capstone? Is there entrepreneurship? Give you a chance to get into those programs. That is something we're a little bit worried about being affected in this. You know, if you want to go out, and are the workplaces going to be ready? But especially in your area, I think there's going to be spots where she could do some job shadowing and do some interning. And there are opportunities for credit there. And going and talking with somebody at your school and asking about those programs is going to be something I would really encourage.
I'm going to piggyback off that, Amy. And the other thing I would encourage, I know we keep saying that SD My Life, but I mean, that's for all students. And there's some really great resources within that. And I don't know if the counselors are able, or what levels, or where they're able to put that in at your school particularly. But I know those align with some of the codified laws that are out there. So that would be another area. And like Amy said, you know, there is a lot of resources that I would kind of agree. If you can tap into some of those this year, the more the merrier.
The other thing to think about too is work experiences that you've already had. So maybe summer jobs or work experiences that you're looking to have. I don't know what the schedules look like, but if some of those things are canceled or events aren't happening because of whatever situation, maybe what kind of job can you get that would allow you to work on Saturdays, or volunteer opportunities can you challenge yourself with to help you figure out some of the things that you like. I always like to tell my students who want to be teacher assistants, it doesn't matter what your career is going to be, you're going to learn something. You're going to learn, do you like to work with kids? Do you like to work on a timeline? Do you want that accountability piece, or would you rather work for yourself and have your own personal accountability and not someone else to turn into? And so I think there's lots of things that you can learn from every opportunity. It's just making sure that you're figuring it out, unfortunately for yourself, if you don't have that direction.
Back to her question, Darren or Ryan, do you have anything from the post-secondary level?
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for Ryan, but I know they do a great job down there at SDSU at getting the students through as well. From a parent and a student perspective, that is a very difficult thing. And I grew up in a very small town where I think I had the opposite issue of what your daughter's having. There was a counselor there one day a week, but hardly ever there. So that kind of career training or the career vision was a lot left after 5 o'clock or after 3. So what we try to do as a school is make sure that when we do a tour around campus, when we can get you here, albeit look a little bit different, a lot like the picture on the left side wearing a mask and whatever, we don't just talk about the program, we'll actually go see it. So if you have a time to visit a campus, SDSU, Lake Area Tech, any school for that matter, you know, getting that visual and kind of putting yourself in that workplace. So if you wanted to be in cosmetology or be a nurse or be in the agriculture programs, or careers, I should say, we would take you in the program and show you what those look like, rather than just showing you a course outline and saying, maybe you want to be a nurse. We'd take you up and show you what it looks like to be in an anatomy lab and to be in a simulation lab. So the tours are great. Our experience days, which are known as tech days or campus visit days, albeit again, might look slightly different, are built for that exact thing, is to help out. And I don't want to over talk anybody, but I think the same could be said at all the colleges where we do try to fill that void. But there is a slight disconnect where I may only get you for an hour or two during a semester. So that's where staying in touch, like Ryan said, call the admissions office, make a friend. My cell phone number's on my business card, so I couldn't run from you if I wanted to. So you can always stay in touch with us.
All
I think
right. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll keep that brief. Yeah, I think well said, Darren, about all the opportunities for visiting campuses. So yeah, I would just echo a lot of that. And kind of specific to the question, a lot of schools do have exploratory programs as well, where maybe you don't have to commit solidly to a program of study. Again, may depend on the type of institution that you attend, but that can include, career exploration, but also academic tracks that start kind of exploratory and correctly and appropriately choosing courses that will help keep open a broad range of majors within career interest areas that you potentially would have. So those can be some great options while you explore.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. This last question, we'll just kind of leave it at that. I think we've covered a lot of areas and we're running out of time, but we really appreciate you kind of opening up this conversation. This is going to be live streamed on our conference website so that all the other teachers can watch the recording that weren't able to be on here. And I think you're just going to provide a lot of insight as they help parents and students kind of navigate these waters that are a little uncharted for all of us. I will, for those of you watching live or on the recording, in the resources tab, I will share contact information for Kathy, Darren, and Ryan if you want to reach out to them with any questions. And then Alyssa and Danielle are both available on the K-12 as well. So if you want to follow up with any of us, you certainly can. And Jamie too. I'll throw her information out there. So thank you very much and have a good afternoon.